Hi there. In this video, we'll be covering how much can you make writing a book. You could generate six-figure revenue from writing a book, but you need to follow the right process. By the end of this video, you will learn how to rethink book sales, the hidden cost of book writing, and why your book's success ultimately falls on you. And stay tuned until the end of the video for a resource I really think you're going to enjoy. Let's dive in. It's interesting to think about revenue from books, that books can be a revenue generator. You know, you hear these stories about these book authors that have a bestseller and made so much money from all their book sales. It's so easy to get caught up in the frustrations around book revenue, and so easy to be both excited and disappointed when you do publish a book and you see the outcomes. So before we really dive into this, I want you to think about the doors that can open from your book. What are the opportunities that can be created from writing your book? Is it better speaking engagements? Is it better interview opportunities? Is it leads for your business? Is it platform growth? Is it social media? Is it lead generation from a free giveaway on your website? Is it book sales? You know, there's so many different opportunities for revenue from a book. It's interesting to think about revenue from books, but it's also limiting. You know, and before we really dive into this topic, I want you to think about those other secondary outcomes of your book and the doors that can open because of your book. Anytime we think about revenue from a book, it's easy to focus on book sales. It's easy to think about the number of copies sold, the amount of money per copy, and do some math and say, okay, well, if I sell 1,000 copies, I'm going to make this much money. If I sell 2,000, I'm going to make this much money. Stop that. I don't want you to think about book sales. I don't want you to think about revenue from book sales. It's fleeting and it's difficult, and it's something that you don't have a lot of control over. It's really limiting. You know, when I work with authors on their book and they focus on revenue, some of them don't care about revenue at all. Some of them want to write a legacy project for their family. Some of them want to write for an audience of one. When I work with an author on their book, it depends on what their goals are. Some of them really just want to write a legacy project for their family. They don't have any financial goals at all. And other ones want to sell as many copies as possible. And the ones that I've worked with who wanted to sell as many copies as possible were the ones who struggled the most with making money from their book. The revenue wasn't there because it's inconsistent to think about book sales as the key revenue driver. So if you're thinking about book sales and you're focused on that as your main source of revenue, I want you to pull back from that. I want you to suspend belief, and I want you to think about other things. Book sales alone are not going to get you to the revenue goals that you hope to have for this book. These days, fewer and fewer books are selling lots of copies. Most books don't sell 1,000 copies. A lot of books don't even sell 500 copies. There are so many books in the world, and there's so little time for everybody to keep reading all these different books. So your audience and your ability to reach people with your book may be limited. You may have overarching, overstated goals for the size of your audience or the number of people that are going to read your book. You know, I think back to some of the books I've written, and these were popular books and well-received books that have sold thousands of copies. And some of my friends, some people I grew up with, were like, oh, I'll read it next. I'll read it, you know, it's on my list. It's on my list of things to read. I'm like, but we grew up together. Like, this is a really interesting book. You know, shouldn't it be at the top of your list? You know, people are going to read books on their own schedule, and you need to keep that in mind when you think about book sales. You know, they're not just, you know, going to start reading it the moment it comes out. You know, this isn't like the next popular streaming show that everybody needs to see it right now. This isn't Tiger King where, you know, everybody was racing to see it the moment it came out, and there was buzz, you know, and word of mouth like you need to see it this moment. You know, books are something that people read on their own time. And because of that, it's inconsistent to think about the schedule and the path that people follow for reading the book. There's so many reasons to rethink book sales. And when you think about your book and the revenue that you can get from it, don't focus on book sales as a main driver of revenue. If you get revenue from book sales, great, but don't think of it as the main driver. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is the costs associated with bringing your book forward. They could range so heavily. I mean, if you end up doing a lot of the work yourself, you're going to cover those costs, then it's not going to be out-of-pocket expense. If you work with a ghostwriter, to write your book with you, that could be $25,000, $50,000, $75,000. And then you think about the paths to publication. If you traditionally publish, you'll typically get an advance against future royalties to complete the draft and to bring the draft forward to completion and publish the book. If you self-publish, those are going to be out-of-pocket expenses for editing, for cover design, for layout, maybe for promotion. So there's elements to keep in mind when you think about cost and you think about making money. The more money you spend on writing and editing and publishing the book, the more money you're going to have to generate to break even on the project. On the flip side, and on a positive note, typically when you work with professionals on your book, when you think about working with a ghostwriter or you think about working with a top-tier editor, the money-making potential from your book is going to be higher because you're going to work with people who know how to turn your book into a revenue driver, which is an important thing. You want to work with people that are going to help you accomplish these goals, and if revenue generation is a goal of yours from your book, you're going to want to work with people who know how to do that. There's been studies done and research that supports this, that when authors work with ghostwriters, their books generate lots more revenue than if they don't work with a ghostwriter. So doing it yourself could be limiting in the end if you don't work with people who can help you accomplish that goal of revenue. The other thing to keep in mind is that the ultimate outcome from this book, the revenue success, the opportunities that get created are up to you. This is really up to you. You are the person who's driving this forward. You are the author of the book. This is your message and your story. And it's going to be up to you to put yourself in those spaces, to keep pushing this book, to figure out how your book fits within your sales funnel, whether it's bringing people into your company, building leads and turning them into clients, whether it's speaking engagements. You're going to be the one who goes to those speaking engagements and give a speech. If you want to enter that arena, if you want to pursue those opportunities, there's great rewards on the other side of it. But if you don't pursue those opportunities, there's no rewards. It's misguided sometimes because a lot of authors, they'll put their book on Amazon and other places online and just expect things to happen. Expect people to find their book, expect readers to pop up, expect to find their book tribe, out of nowhere. And that's not how this works. Whether it's advertising, whether it's marketing support, whether it's speaking engagements, there's so many things that you can do to promote your book. And it's ultimately going to be up to you whether the book is going to be successful or not, because you're the one who defines what success is. If your goal is to generate six-figure revenue and you don't generate six-figure revenue, was the book a success or a failure? It's going to be up for you to see how far you want to take this, how far you want to promote the book, how you want to make it a part of everything you do. And the more that you can do and the more services that you can connect to the book, get people into your funnel and maybe buying something, that's going to really create opportunities. When I think of revenue from books, I think of two of my clients, and they both followed very different paths. One of my clients has a business, a very successful business, and his clients pay him tens of thousands of dollars every time they work with him. And we wrote a book together. So the book comes out. It sold okay. It sold a couple hundred copies probably. Didn't sell great, was never a big driver on Amazon. Every once and again, the client will talk to me. We'll check in, we'll talk, and he'll tell me about new clients who read the book and said they want to work with him. And they pay him $50,000 or $75,000 every single time. And this has happened 3 or 4 times now. So this book, even though it's only sold a couple hundred copies, has generated 6 figures, which is a really neat thing to think about. It's rethinking the elements of success. When you think about a book and you think about the number of copies this book sold, you wouldn't say this was a successful book. But if the book has generated well over $100,000 in revenue, that's pretty successful. I have another example I want to share, and this is from my friend Jonathan Stanley. Jonathan wrote a book called Purposeful Performance, and it was about rethinking the workplace and rethinking how we treat people in the workplace, getting value out of everybody, making them feel like they're a part of something, and just kind of reimagining what work looks like and really building purpose into it. We worked together after Jonathan finished his draft. We sharpened some things, moved some things around, and it was just a great process. He published the book in 2024 and kept pushing it on LinkedIn, on social media, going to author events. He kept going with it. And in early 2025, he was invited to do a book signing at a Barnes & Noble in Pennsylvania. You know the drill. Go to sit at the table, maybe 4 or 5 people actually buy the book, a bunch of people walk past and don't do anything. You know, and what's the outcome? You know, typically it's great, you know, met some people talked to me, they didn't buy a book, you know, we've all been there. And Jonathan did that. You know, he was talking to a 4-year-old girl who came up to the table and she was telling him how she wanted to be an author. And it really motivated Jonathan and really inspired him, and he signed the book for her. And then the girl's mom posted a video on TikTok of Jonathan at the table signing this book. And this thing went gangbusters, you know, in a matter of a day or two. You know, he went from 1 TikTok follower to 750,000 in a day, interviewed by NBC News, The Washington Post. This thing went big. You know, he was one of the top paperback nonfiction book sellers in the country for a specific week, which was awesome. You know, he was out selling Dr. Seuss for a little while. And, you know, it was really neat to see that and neat to see the revenue that's going to come from that. You know, so, you know, it really was a matter of him showing up and him continuing to push and promote the book. If he didn't go to that Barnes & Noble and he didn't do the book signing and he didn't show up with energy and purpose and authenticity in this moment, none of this would have happened. You know, this is all about showing up and bringing your best every single time, every single moment you have, and just thinking about the bigger picture, thinking about the fact that this could happen, that there's something out there, that you just need to keep pushing and going because there's so many opportunities, you know, but if you hold back and say, I don't want to do that, like you're leaving opportunities on the table. But there's multiple paths to revenue from your book, and there's multiple doors that can open, and it's so important to think about those doors. If you want to learn more about how much can you make writing a book, I definitely want you to check out another video I recorded. I'll link to it on the screen. It's called How to Start Writing a Book About Your Life. In that video, I cover the early steps of book writing, book foundation work, and building momentum to keep going. Remember, a good book can change your life. I'm Dan Good. Thanks for watching.